of public administration. She also executive director of E-Concept Incorporated and consultancy. She also a member of European Cooperation and Security Organizations member. Also, she is a member of the Science Foundation of the Swiss bank. She served in National Parliament for consecutively 70 years, the senior position on the whole for 60 years. So she has very outstanding achievement both in academic and practical performance. So we are very honored to have her here to make our first keynote speech. So I will not waste too much time because you are waiting for her speech. And I would like to say thank you for coming and to giving us a speech. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Of the examination were President Kua, Vice President Wu, Ministers, President of the NTU, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here at the first place. It was a great honor for me to be invited to Taiwan, to be invited to this international conference, to share some of my experience and to learn from your experience. And I think with this, the first objective of your international conference is already achieved. The world is vastly interconnected, and we have to share our knowledge, we have to share our experience. The two pictures show the interconnection of the world in terms of flights, in terms of mobility, but also in terms of electronic mobility and interconnection. And it is surprising or not surprising to see how these two pictures overlap. The world is vastly interconnected, and that also means, ladies and gentlemen, the world is increasingly complex. Two pictures to illustrate. We're getting to know more about our neurons and about how life is working. And we realize that in our technical, knowledge-based society, we are reconstructing the same complexity as illustrated by the railway system of London. So the world is interconnected, the world is complex, and we share boundary-spanning challenges. These challenges have their impact all over the world. This slide shows you 15 of the crucial global challenges identified by a Foresight project based in Washington, D.C., but working with nodes all over the world. 15 global challenges ranking from clean water over science and technology, status of women, transnational organized crime, health issues, and so on. We all share the same challenges. And let me try to summarize the good news and the bad news on one slide. The world is getting better educated, we are better connected, and the world is getting more peaceful, even though our attraction is, of course, on the conflicts that we are still working on. People are living healthier and longer than compared to 10 years or 15 years ago. But there is also a lot of bad news to be shared and to work on. Climate change continues, although we have been discussing mitigation strategies and adaptation strategies for years. Environmental viability for our life support is diminishing, water tables are falling, and food prices are rising. Corruption and organized crime are increasing to a state that is putting democracy at stake if we don't manage to have a comprehensive approach to organized crime. And the economic instability is increasing, and the gap between those who benefit and those who pay is widening. The gap between rich and poor continues to widen dangerously. Although overall we're getting richer, the gap is increasing, and this is bad news. These, ladies and gentlemen, are some global challenges, and I would just like to mention two challenges we are facing in Switzerland these days to show that even a small country that lives in a quite safe haven has to tackle global issues. Climate change and energy security. Last year, Switzerland decided to get out of nuclear power gradually. Of course, this decision was taken following the Fukushima accident. In order to achieve this objective, while assuring our energy security of our economy, of our civil sector, and at the same time delivering on our obligation to reduce our CO2 footprint, will be a huge challenge if we want to do all these things at the same time. And therefore, a comprehensive and long-term energy strategy is underway, focusing also particularly on research. And second global issue, financial crisis. Even though our economy in Switzerland is well off, the international financial crisis has a very important and direct political impact on our tax system and on our banking system. And this is crucial for Switzerland's economy. And it affects our relation to other countries, to the European partners, to the United States. So a very small country can be very directly affected by global challenges. So the next question is, how shall we tackle these issues, and what does this mean for public sector? We just sum up. The complexity of challenges is growing. Complexity of challenges for public administration. Local issues, very local neighborhood issues, can depend on global developments. The velocity of change is increasingly exponentially, and I think this is one of the most biggest challenge we're facing. And at the same time, we need long-term strategy. So how do we develop long-term strategy if the velocity of change is increasing? And the amount of information and data is simply exploding, and we have to manage this. And this means also that the people, our citizens, know what is happening elsewhere. And we have to cope with this fact and discuss these issues with them. However, I am quite confident that experience shows that we have the resource to address these challenges. And at the end, the main question is to what extent decision makers, politicians, will be able to take the right decisions at the right time. And the public sector will be absolutely key in this, in spite of all the bashing that we have been sharing through the last years. How to approach these challenges? I tried to summarize my approaches in the form of the jade symbol you have in your National Palace Museum. And this tries to summarize all the aspects I will go through in in my presentation. Value-based, value-oriented, effective and efficient, objective-oriented, evidence-based, participatory, and at the end, be supported. So let me start with the core issue: value, values, and culture. The cultural diversity of our society is growing. Most countries, and also this is the case for Switzerland, we don't form nations in the sense of a common ethnic or linguistic identity anymore. The feeling of belonging together, as well as the responsibility for common issues, nevertheless, is crucial. And it has to be based on shared, basic human values, going beyond our personal, our economic, our physical ambitions. The public sector will be key in fostering social cohesion, and therefore public policies have to be value-based as well as value-oriented. Value orientation means not just looking at the costs and the expenditures. That's why my next element will be objective oriented. Public administrations depend on clear objectives set by policymakers. They have the legitimation to do so, and they should do so. They should also be responsible for the delivery on these decisions they have made and they have elected. Shifting from expenditures solely to an objective-oriented management strengthens strategic approaches and makes, at the end, performance assessments possible. You will hear a lot about performance indicators, performance assessment throughout this conference, and we all know that we share problems implementing this approach. We have to take care not to over-regulate our systems through a complex system of indicators. We have to take care not to link indicators, performance indicators, too closely to budgetary lines, because they are meant in different, they represent different strategies and different logics, but nevertheless, I still believe that shifting from an input to an output-oriented management of public administration is a very important step forward towards more strategic management of public administration. And at the same time, this gives more flexibility to act according to needs, but also to options on their operating level. And by doing this, this will be a challenge for civil servants, since they are given more responsibility. They're given more responsibility for the output of their work and for their own performance. To do so, they have to work evidence-based. Evidence-based means a lot. The faster we drive, the farther ahead our headlights must shine. This is a quote from the European Foresight College. I like it. Evidence-based decision-making, evidence-based management of public administrations means taking into account experience, assessed by thorough performance evaluations, be it on a regular basis or be it from time to time addressing specific issues, new scientific findings delivered by the research community, but also insights given by foresight projects. Insights given by foresight projects that offer different scenarios of how our world could develop. And working in options is becoming more and more important. Therefore, I believe we need new forms of cooperation at the interface of science, civil society, and decision-making in order to cope with these challenges ahead. We have to shift from thinking in silos to working something like trans institutions, to working transversally, and to use all the synergies we can have while integrating new research. This means also working in a different way. It means working in partnerships, working in a participatory way. This as well as for social cohesion. Concerned participation should be enhanced. By doing so, we have to be aware that some interests are better organized than others. Normally, the haves are better organized than the not-haves, and we have to take into account all interests of our citizens and our work. Of course, decision-making may become slower by integrating the public in a more differentiated way. Yet, decisions based on participation tend to be more sustainable. And that is what I try to say to myself when I realize how slow decision-making is in Switzerland, because we tend to integrate people's participation at every stage of the political procedure to the final referendum. That can take months, but at the end we will have a stable decision, be it yes or be it no. And besides, and this has already been mentioned, public administrations are the gateway of politics to the public, and therefore have to serve and shall serve in a friendly and citizen-oriented spirit. This interface to the public and interface to other partners in a participatory environment is more and more supported, and I realized this morning that I was managing my team in Zurich with my HTC, and that was very practical to do so. ICT has an enormous impact on private business models, and we see that every day. Products and services are merging more and more, and ERP software changes the style of management in private companies, since the whole process becomes visible for the co-worker. However, I realize that the public sector is lacking behind in this field. It's lacking behind, we're lacking behind in terms of e-government projects addressing the interface of citizen and public politics as well as public administration. We can make much more with a strategic approach to e-government than just with a technical approach. We lag behind when it comes to open access to information and to building up collective intelligence to have the information needed just in time, in the right quality available. And we lack in terms of ERP-supported management for public administration procedures. In other words, we need new business models, and I think that's what you meant when you were talking about innovation in the public sector. At the end, effectivity and efficiency is the goal, are the goal. And that's why I didn't want to mention them particularly, because they sum up and they will be the impact of this way of working together in an evidence-based, objective-oriented, participatory and e-supported. What are the lessons learned regarding civil servants and regarding human resource development? In order to cope with these global challenges and with the velocity of change, of course, the first
bullet points are the bare necessities. Civil servants should comply with legal prerogatives, with budgetary constraints, and with administrative neutrality, serving our people in respect with all different interests and needs. And of course they have to deliver public services effectively and efficiently. But to do so, we have to be open-minded, we have to be flexible and able to adapt to changing needs and changing circumstances. We have to be able to position our task in a broader context, and that's why it's so important that you go abroad and see and share your experience with the experience made in other countries. It's the only way to reflect on what we are doing in our own country is to go abroad and to see that maybe the same thing can be done in a very different way and maybe in a very better way. And this is the case for all our countries. We have to be able to work in multiple networks. And working in multiple networks means facing completely different logics, various logics. And we have to be able to work in these different networks while keeping our task and our goal to deliver in our mind. And this is not always easy. And we have to show leadership and take over responsibility, since an output-oriented management will give us more responsibility for the achievements of our agencies. And for civil servants, most particularly, they have to lead their co-workers value-based, friendly, and objective-oriented. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the public sector will be key in coping with local, regional, but also with global challenges in a sustainable way. Public sector is the only one that has a real long-term perspective, going beyond the sometimes short-term interests of the economic sector, and also going beyond the sometimes short-term electoral interests of politicians. So public administration is a sustainable bone of the whole system. Thinking in multidimensional options will be essential in addressing the global complexity of challenges and the increasing velocity of changes, because maybe tomorrow something will already look different than we thought it was looking today. And there we have to be able to be flexible and have to have different options at our possibilities. And the strength of the public sector strongly depends on the quality and on the commitment of its civil servants. And therefore, they deserve high quality training, basic training, but also continuous training in order to be fit for the ever-changing future. And this is the case for civil servants all over the world. And this picture shows you just some civil servants in very different working conditions, but delivering the same and coping with the same challenge, and your conference contributes to this international exchange.
Ask Barbara kindly to take some questions after that. I forgot to mention, Barbara has 3 doctoral degrees. Two? One in public administration and political science, the other in environmental science. So you can see in front of her original name, we have doctor, doctor, and a doctor. A doctor. She can handle and very good in master for 6 languages. So if you can use, other language to ask her, she will understand. So except the Chinese. Okay. So whoever want to raise your questions for Barbara to answer. Would you like to? Yeah. Yes, yeah, from Dr. Gao.
非常感谢 Dr. Barbara Heron 的精彩的演讲。那么我有一个问题要请教一下哈，就是我们了解公务人力的资源的发展，与各当地的政治环境与制度有相当的关联性。我有2个问题问一下：假使说政党政治有政党轮替的时候，这些因素以及明显的代表对公务人力资源的发展，特别是高阶文官的甄选与禁用，有什么任何的影响？假使有这个2个因素有影响的话，有没有什么好的方法来对应或是解决？以上，谢谢。
But would you like to respond immediately or take some more questions and answer with him? Yes. If you have more questions, I'll ask Barbara to take all questions and respond together. Okay, thank you. Would you like to like to be the second? Yeah. How about any other questions? Any other question? Oh yes, from Dr. Warner from Australia. Yes, that's you. yeah.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
I just wonder if the nature of the public sector may also change as well. I wonder if we might have a lot more quasi-public servants, people who are not employed in the public sector but actually work alongside the public sector. That a lot of people in voluntary associations, human supporting organisations may end up effectively being public servants, not necessarily under Public Service Acts or not necessarily under some of the formal legal requirements, but nevertheless they're delivering public policies and they're working in public environments. So some people may be almost bilateral or multilateral in their kind of responsibilities. They may be in the community, they may be in a family, they may be working on government policies.
So, those questions. Any other? Oh, yes. Thank you.
Dr. Heron, you are giving us a very complete concept of how a wonderful government and the populace. My question is that in Switzerland, do you have a constant system of pooling the approving rate of the government? Approving rate of the government. Do you have this kind of system, and how is the approving rate from the people to the government?
I mean the poor rated of the civil servant, poor rated?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's the question I mentioned yesterday. The poor rated, some civil servant will be rated lower. Then how to deal with this kind of poor rated civil servant? Okay. Thank you. Maybe we can respond for the three questions first. Thank you, Barbara.
The first question addresses the systematic approach, and I would like to answer on 2 levels. What I realize is that you can have very different systems as long as they are coherent. For example, in Switzerland, civil servants don't pass an exam to become civil servants. They are hired on a competition base. But our university system is not as broad as yours. We have only about 30% of people who have an university grade, and that's, so to say, the entry ticket to civil service. So we don't have an additional entry exam to become civil servants. So both systems work, but they have to be coherent. And I think this is the most important thing. If you change one part, for example, if you change from input to output-oriented management of the public administration, this works quite well in the public administrations, but the politicians have to adapt to that system as well, because they should not interfere on the same operational level as they used to do before. And so sometimes even if you change the public administration management, you will have an impact on the way political decisions have to be taken, and vice versa. But it doesn't mean that the public administration has to. But it doesn't mean that public administration should follow political movements. This is not the case, and that would be my answer on the second level. I believe public administrations have the duty to serve all people in a country and not taking into account what kind of political objectives the individual person would like to follow. So administrative neutrality vis-à-vis the civil society and vis-à-vis our citizens is very important. But on the systematic level, you always have to assess the impact of a change made in one part of the system on the other part, because at the end, the economic sector, policy making and public administrations have to work hand in hand and have to work in a coherent way. This would be my answer to your first question. Would you?
第二个问题就是说，明显的代表就是变成一个政务人员，他对于这个人力资源的发展，特别是高阶文官的甄选与任用，会有什么影响？假如有影响的话，怎么样来解决？
I would try to limit their influence. So the second question was the question about the fact that public service has something like an entourage, NGOs working together with them, consultants working together with them. And I must say, in Switzerland we have experienced huge pressure on public administrations, and the numbers of civil servants has been lowered dramatically. The impact of this is that the knowledge base within the public administration has been reduced as well, and they depend now on consultant, and I benefit sometimes from this fact. And I think this is a very dangerous development in my country. I believe the public sector and the public administration has to be in the driving seat, and of course can be supported by the entourage, by consultants, by NGOs in specific issues, but they are the ones who have to deliver regarding political decisions that have been taken by be it the government, be it a parliament. So also in my contracts and in the projects I'm working on, I really try to give this responsibility to the public civil servant. They are the ones who have to deliver at the end and are responsible for what they deliver at the end. Yeah. And now the third question, I must say I still didn't get it completely about the rate. What do you mean by rate?
My question is very simple. In any democracy, you must have a system of pouring from the citizens, okay? And what is the approving rate of the incumbent government from the citizen, from the people of the Switzerland? You still don't get it? Okay.
You mean how many people?
I mean, do you have a system of pouring, evaluating the performance of the government?
He's saying about the poor for the poor to.
You should have a system of pooling the evaluation of the performance of the government. And I want to know the rate,
the performance,
the approving rate of the government's performance for the time being.
Yeah. He's saying...
okay, I try to answer the way, I think your question is about checks and balances and about how we control our government. And I think I would say in Switzerland it's a very, we have various instruments, and the most important instrument in Switzerland is certainly direct democracy, because every crucial issue, every issue that passes Parliament and has has been determined as being very important is submitted to a public referendum. And this, at the end, has a very proactive impact on the way decisions are made and on the way decisions are prepared. Because at the end, you know that you may run into a referendum. That means you have to integrate the interests of people already throughout the decision-making process long before you take the final decision, be it in Parliament or in government, because in any case you run the risk to have a referendum. And so in order to limit this risk in Switzerland, politics tends to be very slow and to integrate people's participation at every stage. And at the end, I still would not change my system, even though it is sometimes too slow for me.
Yeah, we are talking about the two different systems. You know, in our system, the people have some expectations toward their government because we don't have the direct democracy. So we just by pouring to understand what people expected for the government polling. So in Switzerland, that's different because they have direct democracy. So they just have referendums, to ask the people to vote yes or no for the policies. We're talking about the two different systems.
Of course, in your system, then the election becomes much more important.
Much more important.
That's then the day of the payment.
Okay. Dr. Kwan has a question.
Popularity and supporting.
Popularity, yes. Okay. Now, anyone else have to raise their questions?
Thank you.
Yep. Maybe that's all for this session. Thank you so much for Dr. Erin. Thank you so much for your participation. And this is the first section, so we have the second in the afternoon. Thank you so much.